So, good evening, one and all, and good evening to our speaker, Professor SP Guru sir. Guru sir, I mean, I think we all have known. So, especially, those who were part of my uh, part of this platform, they have known him, and to the PG first semester students of our department in Sambalpur University. Maybe he is appearing before them for the first time. So to them, there is a need of introduction. So Professor uh, Syama Prasad Guru, he is a retired professor from our PG Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Sambalpur University. And he is a person who is, who loves to teach Western political thought, political sociology, quite, for some time, he taught Western political thought. And to any kind of discipline, theory, knowledge or understanding of theory is the most. So in political science, understanding of political theory, political thought is always, necessary for your, analysis. So today the title approach to Western political thought. I have designed this title and I took the consent of him and he agreed to this title. It is because that how to how what should be our approach when we try to read any book on Western political thought. What should be our approach, right? So that is very fundamental. So once we know the approach, then it becomes very easy for us to understand political thought, especially Western political thought. So what is this political thought? Political thought, thoughts are basically about political ideas by various political philosophers across, time and space. And these political ideas are related to origin, structure, operation, and purpose of various institutions of the state and the government. Political thoughts include all kinds of statements, theories, evaluation, and prescription on politics. It includes relation between what is and what ought to be in politics. Therefore, a political thinker describes and analyzes a particular situation as a scientist. A political thinker generalizes as a theorist. A political thinker fixes values as philosopher and then goes on to prescribe the goals as an ideologist. So every political thought aims at building some kind of model or a new system. So if we read Plato, then to understand Plato's political thought, we need to understand the what kind of model Plato has given, what kind of model Aristotle has given, what kind of model social contractualist they have given. So understanding the system or their model is, I think, the very purpose of political thought, whether it is Indian political thought or Western political thought. So I will not go on. So today we have a person who can speak much on it, who can give inputs, which will help us while going through or while understanding Western political thought. So with this small introduction to this topic, now I welcome Professor Guru to start his deliberation. Yes, sir. Now you can continue.
Yes. So, at the outset, I would like to convey to all of you a word of appreciation for Himanshu, who has kept on fueling these web discussions and contributing immensely to the advancement of knowledge in political science. These discussions are disseminated across, among the students, among the teachers. So some kind of stimulation, academic stimulation are provided by these web discussions. Certainly, all these discussions have a positive effect or impact. But as I understand, this is of course my personal perception, I'm averse to web discussions, specifically because web discussions has a number of limitations. It is unable to interact with the audience directly, face to face. But basically, I'm a teacher, and therefore I want to interact with the students directly, face to face. I want to see them physically. I want to interact with them physically. I want to observe their perceptions, the communications that I make to them, whether positive or negative. Such physical interactions are not possible through web discussions. Whether the audience is interested, whether they perceive the discussions well, I'm not able to know. So web discussions are mostly in the form of monologue, not a dialogue. I'm in favor of group discussions, where the participants will sit together, discuss on a topic, interact with themselves, know their reactions, usual reactions, have their reciprocal interactions. And such face-to-face interactions will, I believe, this is my personal perception, I believe, it will contribute immensely toward the realm of understanding, clarity of understanding, and therefore to advancement of knowledge in the discipline of political science. Yet, because of, again, limitations of resources, limitations of time, the endeavor undertaken by Himanshu is certainly praiseworthy, because at least something he is doing. He is stimulating intellectual mind through such web discussions. And therefore, this is certainly a praiseworthy endeavor undertaken by Himanshu. I appreciate it. And therefore, when he requested me for this web talk, I agreed, though reluctantly. Because at present, I'm in USA. I'm speaking to you from nearby Princeton University of USA, New Jersey. From such a far off place, I'm talking to you, my dear students, the freshers who have joined the department. And I'm informed by Himanshu that this web talk is mostly for students of the department. My department that I've served for last 35 years, from 1977 to 2011. And even after my retirement, I am associated with the department in one way or the other, because I'm staying near the university campus. Therefore, I love my students, I love my department. I'm committed to Sambalpur University, because that is the institution in which I have served for such a long time, almost from the beginning to the end of my academic career, professional career. That's the reason why I agreed. But I wish I would interact with the students of my department physically in the classrooms. And I hope I will get the opportunity when I come back to India in December toward the end of this year. Yes, now coming to the topic of the discussion. I am assigned by Himanshu the topic entitled Approaching Western Political Thought. This is certainly a very interesting topic. And I consider it to be a foundational topic for students of political science, and specifically for students of Western political thought, a foundational topic. Because it introduces the students to the nature of Western political thought, the content of Western political thought. Therefore, every student of political science, whether he is an honor student of political science or a PG student of political science or an MPhil student or a PhD student, even every teacher in political science who have or who wish to have an interest to know and learn, I think would be benefited by these discussions. But at the same time, I frankly admit that I'm not a specialist in Western political thought. I do not have any specialization in it. But certainly, I would like to say that I have tremendous interest in Western political thought. Western political thought is a priority area of interest for me. During my student life, when I joined as a political science honor student in GM College, the then GM College in 1969, and passed out in 1973 from Delhi University with MA degree. Throughout my student career in political science, I'm very much interested in Western political thought. This is a priority area of my academic interest. At the same time, I'm also very much interested in modern political analysis, the theories and models which students must be acquainted with for analyzing politics pragmatically, realistically. So these are the two major areas which interest me as a student of political science. And even after my retirement, I continue to be a student in political science, never as a teacher or a professor. I do not profess. I wish to learn and know always. That's the reason why, while discussing on this topic, this is almost in the form of a monologue because I'm not able to see my students here. While discussing on this topic, I would frankly say to you that I shall discuss my perceptions on this topic, approaching political thought, what I understand by it. As you know, in intellectual circles, scholars differ. So you may differ with my perceptions. Teachers of political science may differ with my perceptions. They may have different perceptions on this topic. But what I perceive, what I understand, I would like to share with you, the total audience sitting, consisting of students, researchers, faculty members, or other scholars who are interested in this topic. This is the background in which I'd like to initiate my discussions on this topic, approaching Western political thought. So far as this caption is concerned, approaching Western political thought, I wish to draw your attentive attention. Attentive attention, I mean it. You must be attentive in understanding what the caption conveys to you, what you understand by this caption. Because your understanding of this caption will delimit the scope of discussions and interactions. And every word has a definite meaning. Every term has a definite meaning. So unless you understand the meaning of the terms used in this capsule, it may not be possible for you to grasp the significance of this topic, the scope of this topic, the nature of this topic, the implications of this topic, the relevance of this topic. So what is necessary primarily is understanding this caption, approaching Western political thought. We're using the word approaching. What do we mean by the term approach? We're approaching what? Western political thought. So Western political thought is the object which is to be approached, academic object or subject, which is to be approached. So far as this topic is concerned, approaching Western political thought, therefore. And what do we mean by the term approach? In general sense of the term, normally what do we mean by approach? Approach means a way, a path, a road, an avenue on which we travel. Travel to what? Travel where? Travel to achieve or arrive at our destination. So far as this topic is concerned, approach conveys here the road map, the path on which we travel to reach the destination, and the destination is Western political thought. So we must decide the destination first. We have decided it, Western political thought, so far as this topic is concerned. Now we are to decide and determine the approach, the path, the way on which we are supposed to travel to reach the destination, to understand it. And what we do on reaching the destination, we observe it, we understand it, we explain it, we communicate on it to others, we analyze its significance and implications. That is the objective. That is what we are expected to do so far as this topic is concerned. We must travel to it. And on traveling towards, on a roadmap, towards reaching the destination, that is Western political thought, we must have with some vehicles. Vehicles are the methods. Approach is the perspective. Academically speaking, approach is the perspective, the way of looking at things. It is a pattern of orientation, a belief system, academically speaking. Though physically speaking, it is a road. Academically speaking, it is a perspective, a pattern of orientations, which we must have with us in traveling and reaching the destination, that is Western political thought. And for traveling on this road, for reaching the destination, we must have vehicles with us. Maybe a car, maybe a train, maybe an aeroplane. And these vehicles on which we travel to reach the destination are to be termed as the methods. So methods and approach are not identical, as I understand. These are different. And on this distinction between methods and approach, as I have already been informed by Himanshu, questions have been raised by students in the classroom. What is the difference between an approach and a method? Approach is the path, approach is the road, method is the technique of movement, technique of traveling, the vehicles through which we travel to reach the destination. So academically speaking, approach is the orientation, academic orientation. And method is the technique of data collection and data analysis. So methods and approach are not similar, identical. They're totally different. Within the approach, there is the method. Because with methods, we collect data concerning a phenomenon, an object, and with a method, we try to analyze it, understand it, the phenomenon. This difference between approach and a method can be well understood by students. If, for example, I tell you an instance, say, for instance, you as a student of the department intend to, while taking admission, you have taken admission online, and you intend to come to the Department of Political Science, Sambalpur University, located at Jyoti Bihar. So what do? You have taken admission online and physically you have to come. Come to the department. Department is your destination, therefore. So for reaching the department, for arriving at the department physically, you must decide an approach. You must know its location first. You must draw a road map. And at the same time, you must take a vehicle for reaching it. Either you have to walk or you have to take a vehicle. But you must have a technique with you, some mechanisms with you. Where it is situated in the east or the west or north or south, you identify the approach first. If you're coming by bus, if you're coming by road, you take the vehicle of a bus or a car. If you're coming by train, you have to come to Sambalpur or Hirakud railway station. If you're coming by air flight, you come to Jharsuguda airport, and from there you take a bus or a car. And then you come to Jyoti Bihar and enter into the Department of Political Science as a student. This is the difference between an approach and a method. Your destination is Department of Political Science. Your approach is the roadmap. Your method is the vehicles that you have selected or decided to arrive at it. So you must be clear as regards the distinction between approach and a method. Method is inherent in the approach. Approach is the orientation. Method is the technique of data collection and data analysis. So while we focus on this topic, approaching Western political thought, we are expected to decide for ourselves a definite and a distinct approach to reach it, to arrive at it, for understanding it. Therefore, the destination is Western political thought. What is Western political thought? Political thought authored by scholars of the West, Western Hemisphere, mostly European scholars, American scholars, Scandinavian scholars, who have devoted themselves intellectually in designing political thought and giving it to mankind for the purpose of their benefit. These are termed as Western political thought produced by Western scholars or intellectuals. Therefore, Western political thought is different from Indian political thought. Indian political thought connotes political thought produced by Indian scholars, Indian intellectuals. And now we are concerned with approaching Western political thought produced by Western scholars. So we have to approach the political thought as made or produced by Western scholars of the West. And it is believed that political thought in the history of mankind commenced with the Greeks, ancient Greeks. This is the perception of Western scholars, though I disagree with them. You may come across in a number of books. Say, for instance, Weber's Political Thought. In that book, you can find that what he says, political thought commenced with the ancient Greeks. No, I do not agree with it. My perception is different. Political thought even commenced much earlier with the Indians, Indian rishis and saints. Much before the birth of civilization in the West. That is my perception. Of course, scholars may differ. Yes, now, I would like to focus on Western political thought. The destination which is to be arrived at, reached by us on deciding a distinct pattern of orientation and approach. So what is political thought? This is the moot question which must be answered, which must be explained and understood clearly. What is political thought? What do we mean by the term political thought? How do we define political thought? It is our definition, our notion on political thoughts that would demarcate the scope of a political thought, the scope of our analysis, the scope of our understanding and comprehension. So how do we define political thought? As I understand, I would like to define political thought as a coherent conceptual scheme. A coherent conceptual scheme designed on a state and a state-individual relationship. For what? For the benefit of mankind. A coherent conceptual scheme designed on state and state-individual relationship and prescribed or recommended for attaining the goal of best political existence for mankind on this earth. This is my perception, my understanding of political thought. I would like to define political thought in this way. A coherent conceptual scheme. Let me explain it first. It is a scheme of ideas. It is a scheme of concepts. And there is coherence in the scheme of concepts or ideas. Coherence in the sense that the ideas or the concepts are interrelated, characterized by reciprocal influences and interpenetration. So the ideas or concepts are related with one another. They produce a unity, coherence. And that is why we call it, for instance, Plato's political thought, Aristotle's political thought, Machiavelli's political thought, Hobbes' political thought, or Marx's political thought. We note, or we are able to notice, a coherence in the political ideas or in the ideas or concepts as conceptualized by an intellectual or a scholar or a thinker. So unless there is coherence in the ideas, it can never constitute political thought. If there is no coherence, there is no political thought. It may simply called as ideas. A few ideas, random ideas. So coherence is necessary. Unity among the ideas is necessary. This is the first prerequisite. And therefore, I call it a scheme of a coherent scheme, a coherent conceptual scheme, therefore. On what? On state and state-individual relationship. This is the focus. This is the prime concern with which that scheme of ideas, the coherent conceptual scheme as designed by a thinker or a scholar or an intellectual is concerned with. So the focus is on state. The prime concern is on state and state-individual relationship. And that coherent conceptual scheme on state and state-individual relationship is intentionally designed by an individual, a human being whom we may call as a scholar or an intellectual or a thinker. He thinks, he produces a coherent conceptual scheme on state and state-individual relationship. He designs it, and at the same time, he prescribes it, recommends it to mankind, to the people of this world at large, for emulation, for approximation, for what? What is the ultimate objective? The ultimate objective or goal is attainment of the goal of best political existence for mankind on this earth. Best political existence. So a model pattern of a model political life, a model pattern of political existence is intended to be achieved, realized, attained on emulating and approximating the coherent conceptual scheme as intentionally designed by a thinker on state and state-individual relationship. So state is the prime focus of that coherent conceptual scheme. And what is a state? As a students of political science, you are aware of it. That the state is the highest political organization of a society. Highest political organization. Why it is called a political organization? What is the distinguishing attribute of it? How can you say that this is a political organization and the highest political organization of a society? We call it a political organization because it is exclusively concerned with the decision making of the society as a whole. It's the societal decision making process through which societal issues are decided, decisions are made and implemented. Therefore, we call it a state as the highest political organization. So it is that organization through which societal issues are decided and the decisions are implemented effectively. Therefore, state is an organized mass of population living on a definite territory on this earth, governed by the state through its agent, the government, enjoying sovereignty. That is why we have identified, as the students of political science, the essential attributes of a state: territory, population, government, and sovereignty. So the thinker is exclusively in forming its coherent set of political ideas, coherent conceptual scheme, focusing on state, is concerned with this state as a whole. He forms its ideas on state, starting with the genesis of the state, the origin of the state, how the state has originated, how the state has evolved or developed from time to time and reached the present stage or status. So origin of state is an issue which is on which reflections, speculations, cogitations are to be made. Conceptualizations are to be developed or formed. So the thinker is expected to conceptualize on the origin of state and simultaneously on the end of the state and nature of the state. What is the nature of state? What is the end of the state? Why the state is created? What ultimate objective or end or goal it seeks to realize for its people? and how the state functions. The state functions through its agent, the government. So inevitably, conceptualizations are expected to be made by the thinker on the government as the agent of the state, as the agency of the state, through which the state works for attainment or realization of the very objective or purpose for which it is designed. So the thinker is expected to be concerned with, or in formulating his ideas, his concepts on the nature of government, on the structure of government, on the functions of government. And simultaneously, the second major component of political thought is the concern of the thinker or the intellectual on state-individual relationship. Why? Because the state is composed of a population. The state governs, the state through its agent, the government governs over the population, maintains a situation of peace and order in the society. Therefore, the state through its agent, the government is concerned, essentially concerned with its people. The state through its agent, the government is expected to, or it does establish its relationship with its people, the governed. Therefore, the second major component of political thought is state-individual relationship. How state through its agent, the government, is related to the people. On what issues? And what are the major issues involved here? Issues of rights, liberty, equality, justice, and political obligation. What are the rights which people of the state enjoy under the aegis of the state, working through its government? What is the extent of liberty? What type of liberty do they enjoy? What is the pattern of justice prevalent there? And what do you mean by justice? Fair distribution of societal resources. Giving to each man what is due to him. So what is the extent of rights? What is the extent of liberty? What is the pattern of justice prevalent there? So rights, liberty, equality, justice, and political obligation. Why do people of the state obey the state through its government? Why do they comply with the laws, regulations, the orders, the decisions? So these are the major aspects. These are the major themes. These are the central themes of Western political thought. Specifically, and political thought as a whole, universally. If we call a coherent conceptual scheme as political thought, it needs to be concerned with state and state-individual relationship on these vital issues. So the thinker is expected to form his concepts on origin of state, nature of state, end of state, nature of government, structure of government, functions of government, on issues of rights, liberty, equality, justice, and political obligation. These are the central themes. And while forming political thought, while designing political thought on state and state-individual relationship as a coherent conceptual scheme, the thinker, what he should do at first? He must formulate his basic assumption on the foundational concept. And what is the foundational concept of political thought? when the thinker or the intellectual devotes himself in designing a model state of his own. And the foundational concept is his concept of human nature. The state is composed of human beings. The state governs on human beings. It is the highest political organization for people of a given society. And that is the reason why the foundational concept of a political thought of a thinker is his concept on human nature. He conceptualizes on human nature. Tells us what is his concept of human nature and how on that concept of human nature he has designed his moral state relating to origin of state, nature of state, end of state, nature of government, structure of government, functions of government, on issues of rights, liberty, equality, justice, and political obligation. All these issues, all these central themes, all these components of political thought are certainly or inevitably founded on that concept of human nature. That is, concept of human nature is considered to be the foundational concept on which the thought is designed or built or constructed. So a thinker gives us a model state of his vision, a model state that he prescribes and recommends us to us for approximation, for emulation, in reality, for realizing the ultimate goal of best political life and existence for mankind on this earth. And on this, on finding out, or on designing, or conceptualizing the foundational concept of human nature, the thinker decides for himself, determines for himself a distinct approach. The object is building the model state of his vision. That is the destination, to be reached through an approach. Approach is a perspective and orientation. So that model state can be reached, can be designed through a distinct orientation or an approach. That model state, which is founded on its concept of human nature, can be built by him on the basis of a distinct orientation and approach. So scholars have varieties of approaches, orientations in designing a model state. But if we glance at the intellectual exercises of scholars in designing political thought, we may discern two major approaches, two major types of orientations. And the first approach is the deductive approach. And the second approach is the inductive approach. So on the whole, these are the two major approaches in designing a political thought on state and state-individual relationship. These are the two major approaches. Deductive approach. What is the deductive approach? It is a pattern of orientation which focuses, which is exclusively concerned with speculation, imagination, fancy. So the thinker becomes fanciful, imagines, speculates, cogitates. And he formulates his basic or fundamental concept, foundational concept of human nature on which he seeks to build his model state. So it is an approach of imagination. This is an imaginative orientation, perspective, speculative perspective. Take, for instance, Plato's approach. Plato is considered to be the first political thinker of this world. So for Western political thought. Again, I do not agree with it. I consider Vyasa. But Western scholars acknowledge that Plato is the first political thinker of this world. And what Plato has done, what type of approach he has employed in designing his political thought on state and state individual relationship, what type of model state he has prescribed for mankind for approximation and emulation. His approach is the deductive approach. Method of imagination and speculation, the orientation of speculation. Imagination. He has imagined on human nature. And what he has done? What is his, how he has imagined? Or what is the pattern of his imagination? What are the essential components of his imagination? Through imagination, he finds or he believes. This is his belief, his assumption. He believes that human nature is the manifestation of human soul. He notices the presence of soul in a human body. And what he says? It is the nature of the human soul, the composition of human soul that determines human nature, human activities, human behavior, that determines the origin of state, that determines the nature of state, end of state, structure of government, that determines the issues of, or that solves the issues of rights, liberty, equality, justice, and political obligation. All these are interrelated. That human soul determines human behavior. And human soul is composed of, according to him, he believes, he assumes. This is a philosophical assumption, a speculation in imagination. That it is composed of three elements such as reason, spirit, and appetite. These three elements taken together constitute human soul. Human soul determines human behavior. And on the basis of this human psychology and behavior, that he formulates his assumption on man, human nature, and starts designing a model state, what we come across as the Republic in his book, Republic. So Plato's model state, he has given us a model state in his political thought. A model state, what he terms as the Republic. Similarly, Aristotle has given a model state in his political thought, what is called as the polity. Machiavelli has given a model state, what we call as the nation state. Marx has given, or he has conceptualized a model society, which is the central aspect of his political thought, and that is the communist society. So every thinker has given us a model state of his own, prescribes it to us. But the foundation of the model state that he has designed is his concept of human nature. And Plato here, he has adopted the deductive approach, he has conceptualized it. He has imagined it. So this deductive approach, if a thinker adopts and employs a deductive approach in designing his model state, the state of his vision, it contains his values, his preferences. It becomes idealistic because the method is idealistic, the method is imaginary, the approach is fanciful. It is, of course, laden with values, his preferences, but it becomes an imaginative state, an ideal state, what we call. On the contrary, the second major approach which a thinker may adopt is the inductive approach. Inductive approach is the realistic approach, the pragmatic approach. Here the thinker, the intellectual doesn't devote himself to speculation or imagination. He observes, he experiences. What? Experiences the reality, observes the reality, is concerned with the reality. And on the basis of this pragmatic approach, his observation and experiences of the reality, he forms his ideas. He formulates his basic assumption on human nature. So this is the pragmatic approach. Take, for instance, the approach of Karl Marx. What do we come across in the political thought of Marx? The model of a communist society given by him, conceptualized by him. On what? On the basis of his concept of human nature, the foundational concept of his thought. And what is his concept of human nature? Man is essentially a materialist being. In case of Plato, man is essentially a moral being. But Marx doesn't agree with Plato. He says man is essentially a materialist being. Why? Because he is interested in adopting and adhering to that pragmatic approach, the inductive approach. In formulating his assumption on human nature, he has observed human beings in societies, and he has formed his assumption, the fundamental assumption, that man is essentially a materialist being. What about Hegel, G.W. Hegel? As you come across, what type of approach he has undertaken? It is a deductive approach, method of the approach of imagination. He was a staunch believer in God, and he believed and formed his assumption on human nature that man is essentially a divine being. It is on that concept that man is essentially a divine being. He designs his model state, what is known as the divine state of Hegel. And what about Bentham? Jeremy Bentham, he has adopted the pragmatic approach, observed human nature, formulates his basic assumption on human nature, and what he says, man is essentially a hedonistic being. You see the differences in all these scholars, all these intellectuals or thinkers, in adopting these two major approaches, either the inductive approach or the deductive approach, and forming their own acceptable assumptions, perceptions on human nature as the foundational concept on which they've designed or built their respective models of state, and have recommended it to mankind for emulation and approximation. This is how thought is designed, political thought is designed. So when we approach to Western political thought for the purpose of understanding it, we must also note the approach employed and adhered to by the thinker concerned in formulating his foundational concept of human nature on which he has designed or seeks to design his model state, on a state-individual relationship as well. These are the central themes of Western political thought. So while we approach, we must give due attention. We must be attentive to these aspects. We must note the approach. We must note the foundational concept, his concept of human nature, his concept of origin of state, nature of state, end of state, nature of government, structure of government, functions of government, issues of liberty, rights, liberty, equality, justice, and political obligation. All this taken together need to be approached by us, understood by us, analyzed by us. Whosoever may be thinker, whether it is Plato, whether it is Aristotle, whether it is Bentham, whether it is Mill or Machiavelli or Hegel or Marx or even Rawls. Whosoever may be the political thinker, if he has a thought, there must be coherence in his ideas concerning state and state-individual relationship, and that we are to investigate into, scrutinize, analyze, examine, and understand. And so far as our approach to Western political thought is concerned, at the same time, we find varieties of model state, varieties of types of political thought designed by intellectuals, Western intellectuals or scholars. What are the major types that we come across? How can we classify types of political thought? What are the variables or factors on which a classification of political thought may be undertaken by? And the first variable, so far as the classification is concerned, is the approach, as I have already discussed. We may classify political thought into two broad categories initially on the basis of the approach, whether it is inductive political thought or whether it is deductive political thought. Under what category it will come? If the thinker has adopted the inductive approach in designing his model, we classify it under inductive political thought. If he has adopted the deductive approach, we classified the political thought as deductive political thought. So political thought may be classified under these two broad categories, inductive political thought and deductive political thought, speculative political thought and pragmatic political thought, therefore. And the second variable is, we may classify political thought on the basis of the nature of state as envisioned or conceptualized by the concerned thinker. We may look into his concept on the origin of state and the end of state. What is the end? What is the origin? What is the goal which is sought to be subserved through state and its agency government? Here, so far as the origin of state is concerned, we may note a few major perspectives. Some thinkers are of the opinion, that is their belief, that the state has originated in nature and because of the impact of nature. So some thinkers say that the state is natural in origin. Some thinkers have the opinion that the state has originated because of the will of God. It is divine in origin. Some thinkers are of the opinion, or they conceptualize that the state originates in the will of man. It is man-made in origin. So the state may originate in the will of nature or because of the will of nature. This state may originate in the will of God and because of the will of God. This state may originate in the will of man or because of the will of man. So these are the three major perspectives or orientations concerning the nature of origin of state. And accordingly, political thought may be classified into these three types. Naturalistic political thought. The political thought which believes or which professes that the state originates in the will of nature. The state is natural in origin. As you find in the conceptualization of Plato and also in the conceptualization of Aristotle, the Greek thinkers, the Roman thinkers. It is nature which has provided the necessary motivations to human beings to form the state. The state is natural in origin. And therefore, they consider the state is an organic institution with a life of its own. This is the organic view of the state. Similarly, thinkers like the Christian thinkers, like Augustine, Aquinas, even like the modern thinkers like G.W. Hegel, they believe that the state originates in the will of God, and therefore the state is of divine origin. And that is also an organic view of the state. Because wherever the state has originated in the will of either the nature or the will of God, it is considered to be an animate entity, a living entity. It is organic in nature. Whereas some other scholars believe that the state is a man-made institution. It is made by human beings for their own good, for their own benefit, quite in conformity with their own materialistic nature or physical nature. And therefore, the state, the nature of the state in that case becomes a mechanistic institution, an artifice. It doesn't have a life, but it is a mechanism. It is a mechanism for subserving the very purpose of human beings who have made them. So on the basis of the nature of state, specifically concerning the origin of state and end of state, political thought may be classified under three categories, such as naturalistic political thought, for instance of Plato and Aristotle. Divinistic political thought of medieval Christian thinkers as well as of G.W. Hegel. Pragmatic rational political thought as we come across in the political thought of Niccolo Machiavelli, Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and Marx. This is the second variable on which political thought may be classified into types. The third variable is the nature of government. The state works through the government. Government is the agent of the state. And what is the nature of the government? The nature of the government can be discerned on the basis of its structure. What is the structure of the government? And structure of the government can be discerned on the basis of the flow of legitimate power in it. The government decides how it is decided, how the decision-making power is exercised. Who enjoys the decision-making power in the government? Who gives this decision-making power to the government? What is the flow of legitimate power so far as the government's decision-making activities are concerned? Legitimate power may flow in two different directions. One is from top, gradually towards the bottom. Decision-making power may flow from bottom, gradually upward to tops. These are the two major patterns of flow of legitimate power so far as making of decisions in a society by the government is concerned. If the government possesses decision-making power either from nature or from God, and doesn't depend on the people for exercising that legitimate power, this is a upward flow of this is a downward flow of authority. Authority is possessed by the government, decision making is made by the level of the government, and it gradually descends. The decisions gradually descend to the people for obedience and compliance. In that case, the nature of the government becomes an authoritarian government. It is an authoritarian structure of government. On the contrary, if the government possesses decision-making power from people, legitimate power flows from the bottom gradually upward to the top. If the government depends upon the people they govern and their consent while exercising the decision-making power, governmental structure becomes a democratic governmental structure. This is the major difference between an authoritarian structure and a democratic structure. In case of a authoritarian governmental structure, decision-making power flows from top gradually toward the bottom, imposed upon the people. In case of a democratic governmental structure, decision-making power flows from the people who stand at the bottom, moves gradually upward to the top. So the government is responsible to the people, responsive to public opinion. This is a democratic governmental structure. So on the basis of the flow of legitimate power in the government, on the basis of the pattern of governmental structure, nature of government, the nature of governance, style of governance, political thought may be classified into these two types: democratic political thought and authoritarian political thought. Moreover, there is a fourth dimension on the basis of which we may classify political thought into different types. On the basis of the dimension of time, whether the political thought which has been designed by the thinkers belong to the ancient time, the antiquity, or to the medieval period, or to the modern period, or to the contemporary time, we may classify political thought into these four types broadly: ancient political thought, medieval political thought, modern political thought, and contemporary political thought. Ancient political thought commenced with the ancient Greeks in 4th century BC. In 5th century BC, from that time onwards till the birth of Christ. And what is the distinguishing attribute of ancient political thought, ancient Western political thought? It is naturalism, moralism. Political thought as produced by these Greek thinkers is essentially characterized by naturalism, naturalistic political thought. These are. They look toward the nature for guidance, emulation, motivation. In conceptualizing their assumption on man, on human nature, and forming the state, and the state becomes a natural state, an organic state at the same time. So ancient political thought is mostly characterized by the attribute of naturalism. Medieval political thought commenced from the birth of Christ and continued up to the end of 14th century, where a theology or a religion, specifically Christian religion, prevailed and dominated political thinking. And therefore, medieval political thought is essentially characterized by the attribute of divinism. Divinistic political thought were produced during this time. With the beginning of the 15th century, from Machiavelli onwards, till the end of the first half of the 20th century, we come across a distinct pattern or type of political thought which is characterized by pragmatism, rationalism. Individuals were, the state was considered during this time as the product of human ingenuity, man-made institution. And the fundamental assumption was the state is made by the individuals for their own benefit and good. The state exists for the individual, not the vice versa. Individuals do not exist for the state. State is not an end, but a means to an end. End is the individual good. This type of thinking prevailed during modern period. And therefore, modern political thought is essentially characterized by pragmatic rationalism. From the second half of the 20th century, we find the commencement of contemporary political thought. And what is the distinguishing attribute of contemporary thought? It is characterized by a mixture, a synthesis of pragmatism with normativism, value and fact. They start with fact, not with fiction. They formulate their basic assumptions on the human being, on state, not on the basis of fiction or imagination, but on the basis of facts. They observe the experience and they formulate their opinions, their assumptions. On the basis of facts, they design their state, models of state are being designed, but they conclude with norms, values, what should be done, what should not be done. They prescribe. Take, for instance, the political thought of John Rawls. He's an excellent example of contemporary political thought. So on the basis of the dimension of time, political thought may be classified into these four categories: ancient political thought, medieval political thought, modern political thought, and contemporary political thought. So as students of a political thought, we must also devote our attention to classify the political thought into different types and kinds on the basis of the conceptualizations of the thinker on human nature, the foundational concept, on state-individual relationship as well, with all their issues involved. Finally, as students of political thought, we must also be conscious of the fact as to its relevance. Why do we read political thought? What is the relevance of political thought for mankind? Its relevance is, it gives us a market of ideas from which we are to make a choice of. We have to select what we like and what is good for us. It provides us a market of ideas, a market of models of state. So varieties of models of state are available to us. We are laymen. We are ordinary human beings. These political thinkers are the intellectuals. They're men of intellect. They have designed models of political life and existence which are available to us as models of state. And among these models, we have to make a choice of whether we are to select Plato's model or Aristotle's model or Machiavelli's model or the models of Oxford, Rousseau or Bentham or Mill or Marx or Rawls. We have to make a choice of. It gives us freedom. It gives us scope, opportunity to make a choice, so that we can design our political life and existence accordingly for realizing best political existence for us. We get that opportunity. This is the tremendous relevance of Western political thought. At the same time, all these political concepts which you come across in the political thought of these scholars gives us clarity of understanding on these terms. What do you mean by liberty? What do you mean by rights or political obligation? or the structure of a government, nature of state, end of state, all these significant terms can be understood by us clearly, provided we come across the conceptualizations of the thinkers as contained in this political thought. These are the relevance. That is the reason why we, as students of political science, study political thought of these thinkers, so that their conceptualizations will enlighten us, will stimulate our thinking. We may not emulate them, approximate them, but we can think on these models and design our own models on the basis of our own convenience, what we consider as our good. Therefore, it stimulates the intellect of students of political science, and there lies the tremendous relevance of political thought for us. So, as this is how we have to approach political thought. It is almost 1.5 hours. So I stop here. Thank you very much for listening to me from such a far place, from about 13,000 kilometers from India.
So thank you, sir. I mean, it's not monologue. Students are listening to you, but if they will unmute their video, then there will be some network problem. So it is generally instructed to all the participants to mute their audio and video so that they can clearly listen to you. And secondly, joining to this web talk, it depends on the choice of the participants. So since I have not forced them, I have just asked them, or you join with us. Since it is their choice, I think they are listening to you. They are not
Yes.
passive listeners, but at the same time, to understand certain things, you also require certain kind of level. And since the students are the PG students, so uh, it will be unfair if you will say that they are passive. They are active in their own way, uh, but they may not be active as per our expectation. Okay, I think in the last part of your lecture, I mean, I don't know, after the half an hour of your, I mean, uh, you know, past half an hour, it was a kind of, situating yourself to this whole discussion. And the latter part of your talk becomes very relevant the way, I have already defined the difference between the approach and method, but the way you classified political thought and you put different theorists, and you also said that when you are trying to understand Plato, then what should be your approach, what should be your orientation, right? And when you are understanding Aristotle, what should be your uh, thinking pattern? So I think that is something helpful to me as well. Uh, C.L. Whopper, he has defined state as a organism. I think three categories: state as a machine, state as a organism, and I'm forgetting the another. I mean, he has classified the state in three ways, right? So C.L. Whopper is a very good book. It's a very uh, small book, but it is well recommended by many if you want to have understanding on political thought, Western political thought. Sabine and Weber are the two books. Sabine is very much, David Easton has critiqued Sabine because of his historicism. So C.L. Weber, I think, a book I can suggest to all my students. So now I want my students to ask their doubts, question to Guru Sir. So anyone who is
Yes.
interested to ask?
Questions are invited.
Fearlessly you can ask, you can put your point. Any questions? See, this is the
I-
opportunity. This is the opportunity I am giving to all of you. The more question you will ask, you will be more confident. Okay, Om Prakash is doing PhD, our scholar in our department. Yes, Om Prakash, you can unmute your video, audio as well, and you can ask.
So, namaste.
Namaskar. Kaho, Om
You
Prakash,
on?
kaho.
Hi, sir.
Uh,
I have a doubt that you have already taught to us during the PG level also. It's a brilliant explanation on that. I have a question that what are the similarity between the Indian philosophy and Western philosophy?
What is the similarity?
Sir?
As this is my perception, personal feeling,
Yes, yes, sir.
I do not consider that the Indians or Indian scholars and intellectuals have a political thought, except Gandhi. All these are political ideas. Indians are political ideas, disjointed, disconnected political ideas, fragmented political ideas, ideas on something, some aspects, but not there. I do not find coherence. I do not find their own concept of human nature. They must start with human nature and end with state individual relationship. Such a pattern I am not able to find in case of Indian scholars except Gandhi. So I consider only Gandhi as a political philosopher. What is political philosophy and what is the difference between political thought and political philosophy? You must also be clear on it. Political thought is a coherent conceptual scheme on state and state individual relationship. This is what we mean by political thought. But what about political philosophy? If the basic assumption on human nature is designed by a thinker on the basis of philosophy of life, if there is a moral tinge in it, it will be classified as political philosophy.
sir,
If it
let
adopts,
me let me
if
let
the approach is pragmatic approach, if the approach is deductive, sorry, if the inductive approach, it is a thought no doubt, but it is not a philosophy. If he adopts an inductive approach, a philosophical approach, he has a philosophy of life on the basis of which he designs his concept of human nature and gradually proceeds in building his model state. It is called a philosophy, political philosophy.
sir, if I will say that a political thinker is a scientist, he's a theorist, he's a philosopher, he's an ideologist. If I'll say so, am I wrong?
The same one cannot be an ideologist at the same time philosophy or a scientist.
No, it's a mixture. He's a mixture of everything. I mean, a thinker.
No, no, he has to identify himself as one, not as a mixture. If there will be mixture, there will be no coherence.
Sir, you explained about that Plato, whatever they had given, it is the deductive method. As
Yes.
compared to our Mahatma Gandhi, he
Hmm.
thought
He
about
is
the
also
Ramayana. It is also a
he
deductive
is
method,
also
sir.
deductive, deductive thinker. He has adopted a deductive approach, not an inductive approach. What about his concept of human nature?
But sir, as a student, whatever
Follow.
we are studying
Have you
about,
analyzed his concept of human nature? Do you understand his concept of human nature of Gandhi? On the basis of which he designed his Hind Swaraj, his model state? No. So that is a deductive approach. And what he says, that man is essentially a moral being. Wherever there is morality, there is a philosophical view of life. And what type of moral being he is? He must practice, he must cherish and practice the human values of Satya, Ahimsa, Brahmacharya, Asteya, Aparigraha. He must cherish them, practice in them also. And that will make him a moral being. So Mahatma Gandhi starts with such a concept of human being, and from where he has derived it from Gita, from our Hindu scriptures, he has formed such an assumption on human being. He has been influenced by Jainism. He has been influenced by Buddhism. He has also been influenced by Bible and also by Quran. He has read all the scriptures. So his concept of human nature is essentially a moral concept. It is not a pragmatic concept. And that is the reason why we find that Gandhi is being criticized an irrelevant thinker. His ideas are not relevant today. Why? Because it has become too idealistic to be implemented or pragmatic. So accept
Okay.
Gandhi, find any thinker, whether it is Nehru or whether it is Subhas or whether it is Jayaprakash Narayan or whether it is the present thinkers M.N. Roy or whatever they may be.
What about Ambedkar, sir?
The same thing. He has formulated his concept borrowing from the West.
So you are basically locating the nature of what is the nature of individual, and on
Yes.
that basis you are thinking that whether that person has given the nature of individual or not. If not,
Yes.
then there is no coherence. So that's the
No,
logic.
he must start with the foundational concept, end with state individual relationship, and then there will be coherence.
Shreya is asking. Shreya is asking, and
Therefore, when I was a student in Delhi University in 1971-73, we had a course on modern Indian political ideas, not thought. We do not caption it as, or we will not fight the topic as Indian thought. It is called Indian political ideas. We are men of ideas.
or one can say that Indian political tradition,
Provided you follow the traditions. Provided there are
tradition
some.
basically. Okay, tradition means thought and action.
Yes. Otherwise, it cannot be called as traditions.
Sir, one question is asked by Shreya that Vyasa's political thought comes under which approach and why?
It is deductive. Sorry, yes, it is deductive, not inductive. Because all these are philosophical, philosophy of life. On the basis of philosophy of life, they have designed their political thought.
Sir, what about the Aristotle's approach?
It is. It starts with inductive, ends with deductive.
Yes, it starts with inductive, then ends with the deductive.
Therefore,
Okay.
therefore, it is mostly normative because it prescribes. It doesn't describe.
At the end.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, students?
That's why we call him as the first political scientist.
Sir, there is another part of this question. If you say that Vyasa's political thought comes under deductive approach, the second part
Yes.
of the question is why? Why you said that it is a deductive approach?
Because his ideas are derived or based from Vedas. That is why he called Veda Vyasa. Why Veda Vyasa? He has divided the Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda. He has made it. He has classified them. And on the basis of the Indian, the Sanatani concept of human nature, he has formulated his model state.
Chitra Sen is asking that what is deductive and inductive method? Please simplify with an example. This is very
Yes.
simple actually. Deductive means when you are deriving something from a general principle, that is a deductive method.
When you
For
become
example, let me answer it, sir.
Yes.
For example, all men are black, you are a man and you are black. So that is basically a deductive method because you are following the principle all men are black. Inductive method basically means it is based on your observation. I mean, before you say that all crows are black, then you have to observe crow 1, crow 2, crow 3, and
Deductive is fact based.
you can say that all crows are black.
Yes.
So that is basically an inductive method.
Inductive is fact based. Deductive is fancy based.
Fancy means basically
Imagination, FANCY.
No, I mean in deductive method, if you accept the principle and you derive your assumption from that principle.
Yes, but the principles are idealistic. You imagine it, you
How
speculate.
you cannot say that these principles are valid and reliable for all time, and there is also question mark to its objectivity as well. Okay. So any other questions, students?
Hello, sir. Sir.
Yes,
Hello.
Om Prakash. Yes, say.
Hello, sir. If we are saying that Plato thought whatever is given about it is a imagination concept. So when
Yes,
one researcher wants to go research on the Plato, so he may always give that imagination concept or bring other concepts.
yes. But you have to examine his concepts in the context of the reality. That is your duty as a researcher. Find out to what extent Plato's concepts are valid in case of the realistic situation of the world. That is
But
subject
sir,
to
that
that
is
is
the
a
imagination concept.
that is a critical
So
analysis. Yes,
we are saying that it is imagination concept is only the thinking that things. So
yes.
if you are doing the research, so
Mm.
can you bring the scientific way or
Yes.
it will only the imagination concept?
It all depends upon you. What you are interested to do. What is your orientation? In our discussions, we are concerned with Plato, what he says, what he thinks, what is his model, what is his approach. But your approach may be different from Plato. You may bring about a mixture of these two, imagination with facts, facts with values. It all depends upon you. Or you may be purely behavioralistic in your approach. So
Okay,
researcher is
sir.
Sir,
Om
okay.
Prakash, are you done or you will continue?
Sir, sir. Let's see. Another question is that suppose you are studying that thing, so how we can utilize in the modern time, modern administration, studying the Plato, whatever given the justice education, can we
yes.
implement in the modern administration, sir?
You have
Whatever
to
he has
examine it
given
in the context of the present day situations. Do you find any validity or not? It is subject to scrutiny and examinations in the case of reality. So as a researcher, you have to do it. Apply his models, apply his ideas in the case of reality, and come to conclusion whether these are valid today or not. That is the work of a researcher.
I think we need to think whether that reason, spirit, appetite, is it really part of human body or not? Uh,
Yes,
is it right to say that some individuals their faculty of reason is much more richer than the other? In some individual, the spirit is dominant character. In some individual, appetite is the dominant character. Now, if you see, if you give the you know a rule, or if you give a chance of teaching to the man of appetite, then you are also experiencing the present day situation.
yes,
And if you who should rule, the best flute must be given to a person who can play
yes,
it better, right? So that's the
yes, sir.
principle.
One day I was also thinking whatever the Plato has given the education system, it is totally difficult in present times, sir. If why 50 years you may sustain for becoming the philosopher again. Nowadays it is not the sustenance, sir. I was
how can it
thinking
be
that
possible?
coming
How can it be possible in case of a democratic society where decisions are made on the basis of the principle of majority?
sir,
It is our good luck
then,
that Modi is at present the Prime Minister of India.
And you can say that Plato, I mean, if you divide political thought, democratic versus authoritarian, you will say that Plato's political thought is much more authoritarian than democratic.
Yes,
But it is not always, right. Say that authoritarian political thought are wrong. In many contexts, authoritarian political system is also good. Democratic political,
yes.
system may be counterproductive as well.
but
These
So
things.
thank
we are
you.
looking at
These models give us stimulation for our intellectual exercises. We are to think, where to apply, where to examine them, and come to conclusions for ourselves in bettering our political life and existence.
And here we can say that, sir, whatever they have given the thought during that situation was also demanding that
Yes,
time also.
certainly.
It is true that, sir.
There
Every thought is the product of its own time.
yes,
And every philosopher is the child of his own time, sir.
Yes,
yes.
yes, yes, yes.
Thank you,
That
sir.
is
Thank you.
true. Okay, another question is asked by Santilata. She is working with me. What is the provision of the idea of overlapping conscious of John Rawls in his concept of justice? I mean, Santilata, this question doesn't fit with the title
Well,
of this discussion.
I shall discuss it when I shall discuss on John Rawls.
John Rawls, right? So this is a question. I mean, if I'm giving a lecture on John Rawls, then I think this question is well fit, because to give an answer to this question, one has to be very serious. Uh, you know, on John Rawls. Right now, Sir was not touching John Rawls specifically, so I think it will not be right if a attempt will be taken to answer your question. It will not be right.
If will right now, if will I will try to explain it, I shall take another 1.5 hours.
That is also another point.
Yes.
Another question is asked that you are directly saying that Indian political thought do not have its originality. If it has borrowed major concepts and ideas from the West, then what
It is.
about Monu and Kautilya's ideas? Sir is
I
asking
also
that.
it doesn't have consistency. It doesn't have coherence. Therefore, it cannot be called as or
So
termed
I
as
think that
thought.
originality and coherence are two different things. You are saying that it may have originality, but it doesn't
Uh,
have coherence, and what is a very significant character of thought.
yes.
Okay. Sir, I think that's it. We cannot take more question. I think last
It's all right.
1 hour 45 minutes we are engaged with that topic. So this is the end at the last part of this event. On behalf of all, let me thankful to Professor Guru, and I am also disappointed. This specific talk was organized because of my first semester student, and I was expecting full attendance of my first semester student, but today is the Chadkai. So maybe they are in amusement, so maybe they have not joined with us. But next time I have a hope on them that next time whoever will give talk on this platform, I wish they must ask question to the speaker, so that one purpose of this web talk will be satisfied, that is to build your confidence, to ask question to various resource person. So this is the end of this event. Guru sir, thank you very much, and
Yes.
good night from India.
Good night.
Good night from
If,
India.
if in the
Thank you,
process,
sir. Thank you.
yes, if in the process I've stimulated your intellect, certainly I think I will be benefited. I'm rewarded. Thank you very much.
Okay sir. Okay.